Welcome to the Mystical Journey podcast. I am your host, Hervé Ageniza. This is where we investigate and inquire whether it's possible to be free. I am referring to that revolution of the mind that can happen in an instant, in a drastic way. We are concerned about full liberation, and we want to investigate rather than actually come to a conclusion, because anything that has been fabricated, created for us, has been, thought about by somebody else. But we want to experience this journey into the unknown and find out if there are things that are actually lie behind space and time, or that we call enlightenment. Sometimes it has been called nirvana, or simply experiencing that which is nameless, that which is unknown. Today we want to talk about relationships. Whether we like it or not, or whether we think they're complicated, they're time consuming, and they're simply hard, we actually need relationships. We have no choice but to actually have relationships. Even if you decided to stay home and not even interact with anybody, you still have a relationship. Relationships, we have them through our fathers, mothers. We have relationships with our wives, girlfriends, dog, cats. We have relationships with our creator, the one we call the ultimate God, whether you believe it or not. We have relationships, depending what you believe in, with our ancestors. They're the ones that passed away that we admire and we can call on. We have relationships with gods, depending what pantheon you are looking at. It could be the Hindu pantheon, the Egyptian pantheon, and so on. We have relationships with the universe. We also have relationships with nature. The list goes on. It seems that we live in a world that is interconnected, and relationships are must. We can't actually avoid them. Now then, if since that's a fact, we want to investigate and find out if the way we actually have been living these relationships is the right way, if we might be missing something. Because almost every person that I have talked to, they seem a little bit unsure on how to be in a relationship. And this it could be anything, romantic, friendship. And they're always looking for someone or something that they can rely on, right? Sometimes we find friendship in a dog. Dogs are very loyal. Cats are very loyal too, because they give us something and then usually show us unconditional love. But when it comes to human beings, sometimes it seems really hard. And we want to find out if there's something that we have been missing in terms of consciousness, right? Is there any purpose to relationships when it comes to consciousness? How should they look like? Is there anything that gets in the way when we're trying to have a relationship? One thing we can actually notice is that what we human beings, or the way we tend to live sometimes, it's usually in according to what's already have been built, written by someone else, right? So we go through customs and cultures and books that have been written, and we are raised by our mothers and fathers to do certain ways, certain things, to get a certain outcome, right? And we usually take those things to be the final thing, but then in the end, we rarely have the time, sometimes even a mental capacity, to ask questions whether what the person that I care about, my mother or my father, what they taught me was actually right. is actually, does it actually give me the result that I was looking for? Especially that we are concerned about one thing only: total liberation, right? Beyond space and time and beyond ideas and concepts. So that's a tough subject to get into, because how do you even explain how to be outside of time, how to think beyond time and space, how to transcend life, right? So now, when it comes to relationships, one thing you'll notice is that we get into relationships, or our idea of relationships is that whatever we can get from a person is that idea we have, right? So we create a friendship because this friend brings us something. It could be information, it could be laughter, it could be humor, it could be anything, it could be intimacy, right? So as long as we're getting that, then we usually call that happy or a good relationship. Now, when we stop getting what we want from a relationship, usually we say, this is not good, this is not a healthy relationship, this is a toxic relationship. This is how we usually navigate life. Now, if we go deeper and we start looking really the reason why we act that way, then we'll find that the thinking mind, which is often called the ego, or sometimes it's called the trickster, right? That I, the selfish I, is a collection of memories, right? These memories are nothing but ideas collected over time that are created in time, and they have an expiration date. This expiration date is the date of your death, right? So this thinking mind has an idea of what you are, right? It started when you were young. Your mom and dad told you who you were. They gave you a name. And then later you learned that you were a part of a certain race. And then within that race, then you have people from the north and the south, and the east and the north, the tall, the short, the dark skin, the light skin, you name it. You started putting an image together, and then over time, by the time you turn 15, 20, you have a relationship with yourself, because you have an image of yourself, right? You call yourself confident, you call yourself beautiful or handsome, you call yourself strong and intelligent, but all you're doing is just working within a frame, right? It's a frame that has been either created by society, or your thinking mind, which is nothing but a collective of ideas, has created that for you. So you'll notice that there is always a separation. I'm saying there is a thinking mind and there is your essence. Now, what happens when I interact with another person, another being? What happens is that I have an image of myself, which was built by the thinking mind, and then the other person also has an image of themselves. So their image interacts with my image. That's what happens. That's what's happening on a relationship level, because that's the ego interacting with another ego, right? So when I interact with another person, what happens is that I already have an image of who I think they are. As long as they are delivering, they are acting according to the image that I have, then I say that's a good person, that's a good relationship. When they stop acting according to the image I have them about themselves, then I stop, or I'm unhappy, right? Often than not, most of the time, the people we interact with over time, sometimes it could be in a short time, they actually change. The idea we have about them keep changing, right? Because we live in a world of pattern, right? This pattern is just simply just shapes and forms, completely changing all the time. So then, once I am identified with the image of myself, and also I'm identified with the idea that I have of you, then we are actually just two superficial beings interacting with one another, and we call that relationships. And then we come up with words like compassion and kindness and love, which we actually have no idea about. Right. So then, in the end, when an ego is interacting with another ego, it can always be it can only be superficial. It's always about how can I control, get something from this person, how can I use this person. This comes from the fact that the ego, the thinking mind, is fundamentally separated from the entire ecosystem of the universe. Right? If it says I am the I, right? I need to be fulfilled this way. I need to be talked this way. I need to be satisfied this way. Right? I need. Always requirements, always things that it has created, and that has to happen that way. Right? There is a good chance that most of the parents that you see today, the friends that you have had in the past, that you actually never actually truly experience what friendship could be, or intimacy, or it could be even if it's a relationship that lasts for 20 years. Because why do relationships always fail these days, even more than a couple hundred years ago, is because the ego, the thinking mind, has been becoming a little bit more stronger over the years, right? I have things that I like about me because, maybe I was born on a certain date, and I have an astrological sign that I feel very, connected with. So, and you do too, right? So we all feel completely different from one another. So then what does that mean? Well, it means that until we are detached, we become fully detached to the identification to the thinking mind, or of the thinking mind, then we have never truly experienced what people can call kindness and compassion and love. Why can't we experience that? Because the thinking mind is only a collection of ideas and image of something, right? So if you see a symbol, a sign of something, that sign, it is not that thing that is referring to. What you need to do is look at what is referring to. So everything is referring to what? To nothingness. Until we become detached from our identifications, our needs, and our desires, then we can never have what Buddha talks about, which is that enlightenment is the end of suffering. The end of suffering means it's the end of the state of desiring. What desires? The thinking mind desires. It desires to be treated a certain way. It desires to keep an image that you already have. It desires to live forever. It desires to never die. It desires. Right? So, but there is a great opportunity for us, collectively and individually, to actually find a doorway that can lead us to enlightenment. That is recognizing that when we have a relationship, the other person or thing or animal, they are a reflection of us. They are a mirror of us. So if we are interacting with somebody and we are frustrated or we are angry, that means they're reflecting our anger, and that's a fact. They don't reflect what we wish we had. They don't reflect what we could have. They just reflect what we have and what we are, right? Then from there, it's a good opportunity to start observing. Observe yourself You, the thinking mind, the I, that is basically born in time, interacting as an image with another person, which is also another image. When you are detached and observe that, what happens that it opens the door for you to recognize that you, the essence, is just watching the ego interact with different egos, and you don't need to actually intervene. There's no comment needed. There is no good or bad. There is no stopping it. You just let it be. Ego has to do ego things. But for you, which is the essence, your true essence, sometimes called the God essence, then this thing is where compassion and kindness can come from. Only if you can recognize that there is a world of pattern in which the ego is really heavily involved in, and there is a world in which there's absolutely nothing, or I would call wholeness, right? So detachment is going to be the way for you to start experiencing relationships to really build a better society. We can build a better society by simply being detached. I know sometimes people think that maybe society is doomed, or the idea of being actually really good, absolutely good. A person who is really compassionate, with absolutely no agenda, no goals from anybody. A person who doesn't need anything from no one, right? Who doesn't require to be respected or admired or anything from anyone. That is a person who has tapped into the state of desirelessness, the state of no desire. So then we can truly, collectively, individually, have true relationships, whether they're romantic, friendship, you name it. And this can actually also improve the relationships we have with nature, because we always talk about being in tune with nature, as if that we are not nature. We're one with the entire ecosystem, but because of all these ideas and that we have in our mind and our identification with the thinking mind, then we don't never really get to experience that. So this is an opportunity for us to build real strong relationships by starting to be detached. And if a person can walk to you and say, listen, I love you, I recognize the essence in you, and I don't need anything from you, most people will be shocked, because they would never have heard anybody say that or do that, because they expect something. Everybody wants something, right? So this is the beginning or doorway to enlightenment through relationships, whether we like it or not, whether the relationships are abusive, toxic, we don't like them, they last forever, they're time consuming. Sometimes we feel like we've lost a lot of time. We hate the person, we hate ourselves. The one thing we need to recognize is that however you are disappointed, sad, depressed about any relationships you may have had, it's the essence, your essence has never been touched, it remains untouched. Only the thinking mind has gone through these deceptions and is feeding you this information, and because you are identified with it, you actually believe it. It does that all the time. That's why it made you believe that one day you'll actually die. To think that there is actually something called death that will be the end of your existence is ludicrous. But the thinking mind has managed to trick us into believing that. So relationships that are extremely important, We can't avoid them, and they're a good way and opportunity for us to leverage and become detached and start actually uncovering this trickster. This can start building, what we call joy, which is eternal. We can really be compassionate, be kind, and much more. Now, this also brings me to something else. From that detachment, from leveraging the fact that every relationship is a mirror to what my internal state, the world is me and I am the world, then from there we can actually get into what people call success. We want to find out if the way success has been defined over the years through many books, if it's something that's more on the superficial side, or if there is something beyond what's being described in the books, talk shows, because it seems like it's always around having a beautiful house, having a beautiful car, having a beautiful spouse, having children, traveling, having a lifestyle, and being healthy. Now, is that all that there is in life? Because I'm actually curious, why do everybody want the same thing? Because I want to find out, if we're so different from one another, why do we want the same thing? Perhaps success has been defined by somebody else for us, but we need to inquire and investigate ourselves and find out truly if success lies beyond what we can actually perceive. And maybe this is what has been talked about a lot in some of the books that says to actually reach for things that are timeless and eternal before being caught up in the material world. But it doesn't mean we're against having comfort, but we understand that we need to know and find out ourselves. We know agenda, we know goals, just to find out and investigate. All right, so thank you very much for listening to the Mystical Journey podcast, and please like, share, subscribe, and then also follow us on all the social media channels we have. And I'll see you next time.